collection of medically skilled liberty lovers from all over the place. We've supported events in, both coasts, and, it's not really easy to do business and share silver among us. We had to get tents, we had to reserve spaces, we had to buy a CPR mannequin, and there aren't that many places that accept silver for this. And most places either require, if you're in person, you can pay cash, or most often a credit card, and or PayPal, and all of these options require a bank account. And the one thing I found out when I went to my local bank, because I'm the treasurer, and so I went to my local bank, and she's great. She recognizes me by name and says hello, and it's much better working with a local bank than a bigger bank, but they need a federal ID number. And so in order to get a federal ID number and get a bank account, I had to incorporate. And so my alternatives were to use my own bank account and potentially muddle free aids stuff with my personal stuff, which I really wasn't open to. Some people are, and that's great, and I respect their decisions. That wasn't something I was willing to do. And so we made the difficult decision to apply for a federal ID number. It was incredibly easy. It's with the IRS, and our bank accepted with, just the fact that I sent her my draft state paperwork in addition to that federal ID number paperwork. She opened our bank account, and then that enabled me to open our PayPal accounts and everything else to enable donations to start coming in. And it enabled me to reimburse our volunteers for the expenses that they had paid for our startup fees. And unfortunately, it's not really possible to do business in Bitcoins for everything that we need to do or anything like that. I would love to, but and we absolutely love it when people give us silver or give us Bitcoins. We have 3 donations of Bitcoins totaling 5 Bitcoins now, and I totally love it. But it's just not possible to really do business solely without relying on a bank account that I could find. So, and this allows me to do PayPal and do checks, and Dwala. Dwala requires a bank account too. So there's just not that many alternatives, unfortunately. So if anyone knows about alternative banking, let's see me afterwards. And if there are really any true options of that, let me know. But because we did have a federal ID number, in order to avoid tax liability, we had to file for a nonprofit status. So it's humongous amounts of paperwork that we're all working on, but mostly me in my spare time and in between my other jobs and activism, filling out all this copious paperwork and financial forms and you name it. So that's what I've been doing. So deciding whether to incorporate or not is something that's important to do fairly early, because you need to decide if you're going to have an account to accept donations or if you're just going to accept donations in cash, which actually most of our donations so far have, well, maybe not most now because we've got a big donation in January, but a lot of our donations have been in cash, so that's been great. Setting up fundraising, like I said, we established the bank checking account. PayPal, Dwala, Square. Square's a little credit card reader that hooks into my iPhone. It's really cool. It's just a little inch square thing. I have it in my bag. I can show you if you want to see it. It just hooks into my iPhone, and I can slide a credit card, and they take a portion of it in fees for processing the credit cards, because Visa, they charge a lot of money too. So, but that allows us to accept credit card donations as well. And then we, Stephanie and Garland and I routinely talk about how to prioritize what expenses that we're going to cover. For the first Pork Fest, that was easy because we raised about $650, a little bit over that, I think, by the time of Pork Fest, and we were able to fully reimburse all of our volunteers for the startup expenses of Free Aid, including, CPR mannequin and all the literature we printed and all the stuff we got, because we also give away we accept donations, but we give freely away, sunscreen, all kinds of pharmacy items that people might need or might have forgotten, or whatever, aspirin, whatever they need. Condoms also. Those are popular at Libertopia. So, more so than Pork Fest, which I don't know. Maybe we could do a study on it. But anyway, So we were able to reimburse all of our volunteers that had graciously fronted the money for all of these things. And also the state fees that I had to incur for filing the bank paperwork, which were obnoxious. Those were my least favorite ones to pay, for sure. After we did that, we planned and executed and publicized activities, and we didn't really stop ourselves, even though, you know, like I said, a lot of our volunteers fronted the money for their things, and we just moved ahead, planning originally for Pork Fest, but then doing Freaking Fest and Bardo Fest, and then we also had a plan in place for Libertopia, which was great. We raised enough money to fund sending Stephanie there and reimburse some of the volunteers for their travel expenses and things. So that was fantastic. And that's really the way a lot of our funding has shifted over time. So we originally used it for our startup expenses, but once we had a body of stuff, we've now shifted to subsidizing our volunteers' registration fees and sometimes travel expenses if they're coming from far away. So if they've been a good volunteer in the past, you know, we prioritize them.
And medical supplies too.
Oh yeah, medical supplies are always a very high priority. So our volunteers also donate their medical supplies, and we always reimburse them for those. That's great. And I've donated my AED to Free Aid, so it stays with Stephanie with the Free Aid gear, and we take it around to events, and we shipped it to Libertopia, because that's great. And that way, if anyone has a cardiac arrest, we're right there with the ability to defibrillate, and it's really, really easy. And then finally, managing ongoing operations. You know, we're very transparent about our expenses and things. Anyone that volunteers with us is welcome to see our bylaws, and you know, and I always post on our Facebook group for volunteers whenever we receive a donation, no matter what it is, and I just believe in having transparency like that in any case. We establish bylaws and a board of directors, and a lot of this is required by the state whenever you do decide to incorporate and become a nonprofit, so that you don't have to pay taxes. But in any case, a lot of it is, it was kind of an interesting experience there, because the templates I found were all so incredibly sucking up to the state. You know, it was all, you know, according to this and that law, to the full extent of the law, and all this bullshit, really. And somebody could tell you, like, I had to like totally trim all that stuff out. Hopefully they don't reject my nonprofit application. But it was really, I had to leave in enough to hopefully make it work. But you know, trimming out all that stuff was kind of difficult. So you know, it was kind of a big job. And then we established a board of directors, and it's Stephanie, Garland, and myself are the directors right now. And we tried to set it up with the most flexibility, so that we don't have to worry about the government. I'm the only person on our state paperwork, because that's part of it, is I didn't want to have anyone else incur that liability of the state knowing where we are and all of that stuff. So that's just me, but that's not the way I run things. You know, we're the whole team, and we couldn't do it without the whole team. So getting a little bit back to the incorporating decision, the biggest thing was the bank account, like I said, but one of the other benefits of having a separate bank account for your organization, separate from any one of the founders, is that, you know, if the founder gets burnt out and decides to quit or whatever, you don't have a huge hassle of, you know, having to close that out and start up a new account and everything like that. And one of the things that also struck me is when the treasurer of the Ladies for Liberty Alliance called into Stephanie's podcast, Pork Therapy, one time, I was talking about the fact that Lola decided to become tax exempt also. And one of their reasons for that decision was because people who are still paying taxes can divert some of their money to a cause that they believe in, and rather than paying for stuff they don't want to pay for. And so, and it really struck me that that was a pretty good reason too. So, you know, I definitely wanted to list that. That is another motivator, so that when people donate to us, they know that they're channeling it. And I personally love it when I donate to anti-war. And they're tax exempt also, so I